Hello and welcome back to Quantitative Reasoning Online, Lesson 15E in Conclusion. We have 6 questions we need to deal with. So without wasting any time, let's look at them. So choose what design elements are important in an observational study in order to be able to make an appropriate conclusion. Choose the correct answers. So let's see, the most critical design element in an observational study is an inexpensive sample, such as a convenience sample. Inexpensive samples allow for more project funding to be devoted to supplies and supply gathering methods. Large samples are helpful in reducing sampling errors. What do we know about convenience samples? Not good. So that can't be that one. The most critical design element in an observational study is a representative sample that minimizes biases in selection, response, and non-response. Larger samples are helpful in reducing sampling errors. Possibly. The most critical design element in an observational study are double blinding and confounding. Designing a double blind study with confounding helps minimize sampling errors so that cause and effect conclusions can be made about a treatment. Large samples give more reliable inferences. Okay, there's a couple things wrong with this one. First of all, confounding is a bad thing. We want to minimize variability, control the variables so we don't have confounding. Additionally, double-blind studies is a treatment. Goes for a treatment. And cause and effect is again experimental, and we'll look for observational studies, so it can't be that one. See, the most critical design element in an observational study are random assignment of groups, treatment, and control with placebos, given the control group members whenever possible. Again, here we want observational, but we're talking about an experiment. This design helps minimize confounding, which is true, so that cause and effect conclusions can be made about a treatment. Now, if this is an experimental study, I go experimental study. But for an observation study, no. The answer has to be B. What design elements are important in an experimental study? Okay, most critical design elements of experimental study are random assignment of groups, treatments, and controls, placebos given to group members whenever possible. Control group. This design helps minimize confounding, so that cause effects can be made about a treatment. Large samples give more reliable inference. That has strong potential. Most critical design element in experimental study are double blinding and confounding. That's not design. We want to minimize that. Designing a double blind set with confounding. No. The most critical design element of experimental group is an inexpensive sample, such as convenience. The most critical design element in an experimental study is a representative sample that minimizes bias in selection, response, and non-response. Large samples are also helpful in reducing a sampling error. Response, non-response, that's an observational thing. Surveys, questionnaires. So good for observational studies. So again, has to be A then. Match the characteristics. Which statement about observational studies and experimental studies are true? Observational studies can make conclusions about cause and effect, while experimental studies make conclusions about association between variables. Observational studies can make conclusions about association between variables, while experimental studies make conclusions about cause and effect. B. Experimental studies focus on treatments given to a sample, but it would be ideal if the results be applied to the entire larger population. Suppose the treatment is shown to be effective using randomly selected experimental subjects from Texas. Which statement is correct? Treatment is effective for all population members within or outside of Texas. Treatment is effective for all the population in Texas. However, further research could prove whether effectiveness applies outside of Texas as well. Treatment is effective for all population in Texas, but nowhere else. Perhaps, but without further research, you don't know on whether A or B is correct. I'm sorry, A or C. So, B. When researchers conduct an experiment, they sometimes have people in the blocks. They might create blocks by ethnicity, gender, or age. Why would they do that? Because researchers want to discover for whom the treatment works best. Researchers will not separate groups in that way. The results are strongest when there's as much variety of individuals in the control and treatment group. Because they think that these groups might react differently to the treatment that researchers will give. The different factors create too much variability in the treatment groups, so it is better to separate them. Yes, that is true. But the reason you're doing it is because you want to minimize the variability within the treatment group. Yeah, you do not want a lot of variety. Confounding could occur because of that. And last question. Okay, this is where it comes from. See, gastric bypass surgery helps recipients lose weight by decreasing the size of the stomach, and as well blocking off some of the parts of the stomach and small intestines that absorb food. This way, recipients will feel full sooner, and they will not absorb as many calories. This surgery makes your stomach smaller. Mousy mouse. The vertical sleeve one works by removing parts of the stomach, leaving only a banana-sized piece. This way, recipients will feel full much sooner. This surgery makes your stomach about the size of a... Oh, wow. Gee, I don't know. I'm going to go with banana. And that completes the questions for lesson 15E in conclusion. Looks like there was no other questions, no variety of questions, so you couldn't go back and try again. So now you go and do them yourself, and I'll see you later. Well, actually, you would then go and work with Stephanie and do the workbook and upload them practice assignment. And that's for lesson plan, or lesson 15 total, and I'll see you for lesson 16 in the near future.